and the Pele dances, and because we have been introduced by the generations before us to this particular realm of Pele. We look at Pele as many, the idea of Pele Honua Mea in many different forms. And I think that people need to understand it in many different forms. Because we understand a God, a Christian God, and most of us are Christians, as the God Almighty. See, we don't understand, or we don't parallel that with Pele. Pele is, number one, is Ohana, is family form. Like I was just talking about, like the shark. Okay, so Pele is number one, family form. Number two, the creator of islands. She was the one responsible in all of her family, because there were many. And she was the one responsible for going back into the earth, which is her mother, and pulling out from the earth magma, or lava that we call it. The English words are magma, lava. The Hawaiian word is pele, where she's pulling out pele. And so lava to us is pele. And after it comes out, and it's in the different forms, you have different words for it, pahoehoe, and all of that. So we understand Pele at that level also. We also understand it as being a very nice story, that our ancestors, in fact, it's one of the complete literary works that we have as Hawaiians, is that story of Pele and her siblings and Hiaka, etc. We also understand Pele as being a philosophy for those of our people who understood the making of this earth, the making of land, the cycles, that we experience and we take for granted today. They understood it. And Pele was one of the forms that was involved in the cycles. And so when we do our chants and we do our dances to Pele, we're doing chants and dances of particular eruptive phases in particular areas, and all of this is in praise to the making of land. And so when people talk about me as being somewhat an expert on the Pele tradition, I guess that I am, because I understand it at many of these different levels, and also because it was something that was given to us from the generations before us. To me, anyway, the most important gathering for the Dalai Lama was out at Wood Valley. Out at Wood Valley because that is where my ancestors are from Wood Valley. So I was thrilled that he was going to be there. When we got there, because we just got off the plane from Oahu and came home to change and got on the car and went out, they asked us to do a chant when we were out there, but we got out there a little bit late. They were just starting. And there must be at least, 3, 4, 5 miles between Wood Valley and Pahala. And there were cars parked all the way to Pahala. That was, and then up in the sugarcane roads. So to me, that was very, very impressive. It told me that people were hungry, to hear something that's spiritual. People had been exposed to him more within this time as well. And so, and also I think the Tibetan religion has or belief and practice had spread more since his last coming to Hawaii. And so people were more aware of who he was and the fact that he was reincarnated. He's the reincarnation of of the Dalai Lama before that. And so just to get in touch with that, just to be there in the presence of somebody who has been reincarnated into this man, um, to me was very important to all of these people. I mean, they walked all all this way. That's more than they would talk to any concert. You know, that's kind of reminded me of the old days of the mainland when we used to go to big concerts. But you know, they were going to be in touch with this spiritual person, and I thought that his message is out there. That's what I wanted to hear, what because I don't know a lot about the Buddhist teaching. I know some of it. I don't know a lot of it. And you always get it third hand or fourth hand. So to me, this is getting it first hand. And so what he had to say to me was important to all of us. But for the people who were out there and couldn't hear his message, they were just there to be in his presence. And that was, um, to me, told me a lot about who was here in Hawaii and what they needed and what they had before in way of spirituality that maybe wasn't working for them. But the coming of the Dalai Lama to Hawaii Island, to me, was the most. It also tells you something about this island, and to the people of this island, the spiritual significance or spirituality, to me, is very important to them. And I think many of them move here because of that, and move away from Oahu, move away from the mainland or wherever they came from, because this island has that kind of thing to offer to them. It's a very strong island. This earth lives, unlike some of the other island. And the sense of the spirits here, still live for a lot of people. So to have somebody with that kind of prominence and that kind of importance as far as spirituality is concerned, to come here was worthwhile for them to walk all that way to see him. And not be guaranteed that they could even see him, but just to be there. And how, I don't know if you know Wood Valley at all, but that area is kind of small. But there must have been thousands of people there. So that was very impressive to me. I'm glad I didn't have to walk all that way. But that was nice to see. And even in the rain they walked, because it did rain. Even in the rain they walked. When they were walking it was sunny, but halfway through his talk it started to rain, which to me was real nice, because it was a nice cleansing. It was a nice rain. It wasn't cold, it wasn't windy, but it was just falling straight down, and it wasn't misty, it was a rain. And so it was a nice cleansing, and all the people that came appreciated it. And they left that place feeling better about being there and seeing him and being in his presence. So he's done a lot for, the people that were anxious for spirituality. And I'm sure that they've, and I don't know a lot of these individuals that went. We just sort of picked up people as we went along, and people that, and that's another thing. It made people more tolerant, more friendly towards each other, because they had one goal that they were going to go to, and they all had that kind of level of thinking where this is a peaceful thing. They were going to learn something. Whether it was spiritual or whether otherwise, they were going to learn something. So everybody was going together to learn. That was very nice. And I think that our land can stand some more healing from this kind of learning spiritual experiences that people are so hungry for. And that's a way of healing not only people, but the land as well. And it's a way of starting this idea of peace, going out. So it was a good experience for this island. Oahu was kind of busy, you know. But for this island, it was kind of everything came down, everything was here, everything was at attention. So it was, you know, I can compare the two, and it was a little bit different. It was more spiritual here than it was there. I guess because it was busy on Oahu. And you get more of his sense and maybe his what he is all about, what he likes to teach, you know, what he likes to say there at Wood Valley.
Okay, so I just guess at this point I just want to kind of round it up. And do you have any final comments, maybe anything else that you feel like you might want to say at this point to complete yourself?
Well, I thought it was you know, it was one of my great honor in life, I guess, to be able to be asked to speak with him. Because when they first asked me, I guess it was in September, or sometimes way back like that, when they called me and they asked me if I would, either September or October, and they asked me if I would consider speaking at this peace conference. And the other speakers would be the Dalai Lama and would be the other person. And they didn't say the other person's name, they say it would be someone from the Islamic faith. If I would consider speaking, and you know, I really don't know how to say no. And so, oh, sure, I'd be glad to. And as the time went on, then I realized what I was going to do and where I was going and who I was speaking with. And then it got more nervous for me as the time got closer, you know, to being in his presence and to speak with him. Because after I read all his material, he's a very learned man. He's not only learned, you know, as far as intelligence, he's also very, very spiritual. He also has a lot of feeling about things around him and what is happening to people, to individuals. And so it became a very nervous thing for me towards the end to be there and to speak with him. But it's one of the things within my lifetime that I think is an honor. And I will always remember, because I always consider myself as being, you know, Hawaiian, living in Hawaii and living here on the Hawaiian homesteads and things like that. Very humble beginnings, but he also had very humble beginnings. But I'm still sort of in a humble beginning stages, you know, I think. And so to me, it's a great honor to have been there and to have talked with him, to have been included in, you know, the entourage as he was being escorted upstairs to in the Hawaii Prince. Just, wow, here I am with the Dalai Lama. Hi, friends. You know, that kind of thing. No, I have to say something smart now. I can't say, you know, anything like foolish or silly or be an activist or something like that. I have to say something smart and maybe something profound and all of those things. So I had to call on the help of my ancestors, you know, to help me. So I would say something that was beneficial to people that were there, and yet not forget who I am, and what my background is and what's important to me and my people as well. And so that's my experience with the Dalai Lama. And I look at him as being a very, maybe the most prominent of leaders in this world, because he's not voted in by people. You know, like most of the leaders of the world are voted in by people. He's not voted in by people. And yet he's the leader of the country and the spiritual leader as well, when in many countries they make the separation. And the idea of being a spiritual leader as well as a political leader is, to me, the concept of holistic. When you put yourselves in little compartments, like political, spiritual, and occupational, and those kinds of things, you don't see the relationship between each of these areas of life. But there is a relationship. You live in this world. You are a teacher. You are a political person. You are a spiritual person. So I think that he is one of the probably the only leader of this world that is in that caliber of being a political, spiritual, and therefore a holistic person. Um, and so again, it was an honor to be in his presence because of that realization of who he was and what he represented, and that he was not the president of the United States without that kind of spiritual connection, or the Pope, which is a spiritual leader, but not the two together.
That's
So,
a really, really interesting tie-in. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that one.
Well, I thought of it right away when I started reading all of his materials, and finding out more about who he was and what he represented, and kinds of things that interest him. He's interested in World War II and the planes and the tanks of World War II, and killing machines that were built to kill people. But and so that was interesting, reading about him and what he was interested in.
Did you get to talk to him directly? Did you get to interact with him?
Yeah, we talked when we were in. I think the most we talked when we was in the having lunch together, and because it was a small room, few tables, and I was on the table with him, and he was, and there were other people around the table. I think there was like 6 or 8 of us on the table. So we talked a little bit about politics, and we talked a little bit about peoples of the world, and talked a little bit about what we're doing in Hawaii as Hawaiians and things like that. It wasn't extensive. I admired his interpreter. Talk about intelligence. I mean, he has more command of the English language than us English speaking people. It was awesome to me, his interpretation of what the Dalai Lama was saying. And so, as a Hawaiian, it's very Hawaiian to admire intelligence, and he is, as far as I'm concerned, at the top of the line for intelligence in language and interpretation.
What was your, I know you've already given some reaction to the Dalai Lama, but on a real personal level, did you see him just a down-to-earth person and.
Yeah, I thought the Dalai Lama, Tenzin, I thought that he is in many ways Tenzin. And, he is like your brother. And he is like a good friend. And he's a very personable person. He's always smiling. And, but he can be very serious too. The Hawaiians are sort of like that. They're kind of unnecessary in many ways, and they like to crack jokes and things like that. But they can be very, very serious people. Those same people that make life more bearable are the people that take life very seriously. And he's one of those people. And so he wasn't such, like the Pope to me is, sort of way up there and is untouchable, kind of thing. He wasn't untouchable. He was very down to earth and very informed, but he seemed like a brother, more so than a great leader of a country or a spiritual leader. So that's how I looked at him. I don't know how anybody else looked at him, but that's what I saw. he was. And again, that has to do with the humble person that he is. He really portrays that humility. And not he doesn't only portray it, it is part of who he is. And he's a person of the land, person of the earth, as well as a spiritual and very intelligent person. So, again, it has to do with who he is in the government, who he is as a spiritual leader. And that all comes down to this person of this earth. And he doesn't leave that. He plays in all of these realms, and he's very connected to all of these things. So these are qualities that you don't find in many leaders of this world. A lot of them are untouchable. They're too busy, too much into, getting business done, that they don't act like a brother. Too much trying to manipulate and playing games. So you cannot see the quality of being a brother in them. And with him you could. I don't know, maybe because it was the sleeveless thing he had on. Brothers always have sleeveless stuff on. No, show that.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Really, I think we have really good footage here. I didn't know what to expect, but it was more than I expected.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's gonna be
You're welcome.
fantastic. So what? Can you come cow with us? Can you go eat?
What time is it?
It's 10 minutes. 10 minutes to 11.
Okay, I'll invite my husband too.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go cow. You know where the best place is.
Oh yeah. Stage. I guess one of the monks passed us, and the halal member said, "That's the Dalai Lama." So I just let them think it was.